Okay, hi everyone. Thanks again for joining us today. You are at the small group career mentoring training for this afternoon. I am approving that I know that the meeting is being recorded. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for being here. I'm Debbie Pixton. I'm here with my colleague Gina Barrett. We're with the Consortium for Public Education. I know many of you know us. Today, just want to spend a little bit of your time, which we know is so precious, to talk about the components of a model for career mentoring that engages small groups, that also meets the PA Future Ready Index requirements for the industry-based learning indicator. We'll talk about the different roles that different partners play in implementing the model, and then provide some advice for implementing this model in your own setting. First, a little bit about the Consortium for Public Education. We are a 35-year-old nonprofit based in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, focused on equity and engagement in education. We work with all kinds of groups, about over 50 school districts now in about 9 counties across southwestern Pennsylvania, really focused on future readiness for the last 5 years, so preparing students for life after high school. And really to us, the equipping students to have a formal, so a written down viable plan that answers the 3 questions: who am I, who do I want to be, and how do I get there, are really key to how we think students can feel confident in their plans for the future. So just a quick reminder about what the state calls career mentoring. It occurs when a student is matched with an adult professional in a chosen field of interest to explore a career interests, and related workplace and career development issues. The career mentor serves as a resource for the student by sharing insights and providing encouragement and guidance about the workplace, work ethics, careers, and educational requirements. The career mentoring relationship goes beyond the formal obligations of a teaching or supervisory role. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is because career mentoring, as the state defines it, is one of the options for meeting the work-based learning experience requirement that's under the industry-based learning indicators for the state. And each senior is required to complete one of those industry-based learning indicators before they graduate. And it appears on the PA Future Ready Index. So for those of you who are less familiar, that's kind of the industry-based learning indicator is the umbrella, and work-based learning is one of the options for students to complete. Career mentoring is one way that students can meet the work-based learning experience. And in a nutshell, that career mentoring then is to help students gain knowledge, skills, and experience to help them make more informed choices about their future. And it allows students to meet the requirement that I was just talking about. So you may be wondering why we have approached this and developed this small group model. Well, in the requirements for career mentoring under the state, students are required to complete 6 hours of time where they're engaging with a professional. Now, different options like job shadowing or apprenticeships have different hour requirements, but for the career mentoring, it's a 6-hour requirement. And the goal of that time is really focused on building a relationship with a professional in the career cluster of interest. As you may or may not remember, students who develop an individual career plan, they have to identify a career cluster or clusters of interest, and their work-based learning and the implementation of their career plan is supposed to be focused around activities that support exploring that career area of interest. As I already mentioned, this career mentoring is one way to meet that industry-based learning indicator requirement. So in this model, we recognize that employers have needs. They don't just engage in these partnerships willy-nilly for no reason. They're usually hoping to expand awareness of their industry or of them as an employer. They really usually need to maximize the impact of the time that they spend with students. They really ideally want to spend time with students who have an interest in their industry. So for example, on the call today is Marianne Berg. She works for Mascaro Construction. They really most want to engage with students who are interested in construction. If they have students that are participating who really want to work in fashion design, that's probably not a good career mentoring experience for the student, and it's not a great investment of time for Mascaro. And again, when they're working with students, employers want to help students understand not only what the business does, but the various pathways to get to those positions and opportunities that exist for a career path, right? It's not just, I want to be in a single position, but what are my opportunities beyond that position if I stay in this career for a long time? So key differences about our small group model. As most of you are familiar with mentoring and career mentoring even, it's usually a one-to-one type of experience. But in our model, we're really talking about bringing together a small group of students with a small group of professionals. And that allows for students to feel less nervous, right? They have a buddy to talk with, explore with, and hear other students' questions when they're in that setting. And for the same reason, you have professionals who are interested in, well, what if I don't know what to say to the students? Or what if I don't know how to answer this question? That gives them a little bit more support from the professional side as well. Beyond that, the professionals each have their own stories and their own advice to give students. So it's really valuable for them to be able to work together to share that information with students. And the fact that there is a small group of them means that it's maximizing the time of the employer to engage, because it's not just a one-to-one type of relationship. I would also say that based on the state requirements, there are not enough employers and professionals available to do this kind of in-depth mentoring for every student in the state. And so by offering this model, we can better scale up the opportunity for students to still have meaningful career mentoring experiences. The other thing that really makes this model different from a traditional career mentoring model is that it is done in a virtual or a hybrid environment. So over Zoom or WebEx, whatever your video conferencing platform of choice is. And that helps overcome issues of geography. So students that live far away from a business can still engage. If transportation is an issue, that can be addressed. Because that transportation doesn't need to take place, there's less time both on the part of the professional and on the students to engage in the experience. And for industries where safety can be an issue, a liability issue, you still get to share and talk with students without having the liability of having them on site. And I do want to mention here that our model was recognized by the US Department of Education as a model unique because of these differences and for being able to overcome barriers for student participation. So we're really proud that we received that recognition, and think that it lends extra credibility to the fact that this is something that's worth exploring wherever you are.
Debbie, if I could just add one thing quickly, just to agree with what Debbie was saying, that if you're a little bit hesitant about a group model, which I'm not saying that you are, we love the fact that the students get to build their social capital in that way and maximize the number of folks that they meet. And if you might be worried that if you're in a small group, there's not as much time for engagement, we've found pretty much the opposite with any of the mentoring programs we've done. It's only encouraged students to be a little bit more engaged, feeling that they have someone else saying something. A lot of times in those groups, you have one that's a little bit more gung-ho to start talking, and they usually kind of tease that out of the other students as well. So if you have someone that's a little bit more shy or not as talkative, a lot of times when they hear that other students are doing that's also helpful. And that's the same with the adults. There's, adults are like that as well. So the group has worked really well for us in getting the maximum amount of engagement and human capital.
Thanks so much for adding that, Gina. So a couple other things that you should know about the model. It's really flexible and adaptable, and we designed it that way going into, like, we designed it during COVID. So we designed it to be, we know students need those 6 hours, we know students need that relationship building time, and we know employers need to maximize the amount of time that they have professionals at the table. We also know that some companies are big and they have a lot of folks that they can give an hour to a week for 6 weeks to do something like this. And other companies are small. And so giving that much time from a group of employees is too much. And so companies can do this model alone, right? We've done it with BNY Mellon, we've done it with Citizens Bank, we've done it with Covestro. But we also know that smaller companies could come together to do the model. And we are currently exploring having a group of union folks of the different trades represented implementing the model to help get more students familiar with the trades. Similarly, one district can engage in the model. We've had the model embedded in a course at a school with their strong business partner that district had, or we've had multiple districts at the table. The timing is flexible based on the availability of both the students and the employers. And it's easily adaptable for the time when we're not in COVID to have, for example, 4 sessions be remote and then still have an in-person session that's on site so that students can still see what a company is like and get a different taste of the industry that way. All of that said, the model is still really focused on you need 6 hours of time and you need to focus on building relationships. From a business perspective, we have really coached folks on this isn't a dog and pony show about your business. This is about sharing the stories of your employees about why this career is a good fit, what you should think about, questions you should ask yourself when you're considering this career path, and what other things you might want to do to prepare yourself if you think this might be a good fit for you. Things that you would ask someone that you trust that you aren't going to be able to Google and find easily. So a little bit about the implementation and the roles and the tasks that are involved. So in this model, you're really talking about 4 groups of folks, right? You have educators, and they're working with students and they're making sure that the requirements are fulfilled and that those requirements are given to their PIMS coordinator to report to the state. You have students who are responsible for engaging with the professionals and doing their own personal reflection on what they learned impacts their own future career plans. You have the employers who are bringing their professional expertise and their stories and the things that they're passionate about in their area of interest. And then sometimes you have an intermediary representative like Gina or I from the consortium. We've also had folks from Work-Based, from the WIBs be a part of the implementation, and really those folks provide a coordinating role and additional support to make sure that things run smoothly. A little bit more detail then, right? The educators are ultimately responsible for recruiting students, making sure they fill out the paperwork, that they're familiar with the expectations. Educators are expected to attend all of the sessions, and that's really to make sure that there's someone with appropriate clearances on the call at all times. The educators are responsible for doing their best to ensure that students attend all the meetings and complete any documentation that the district requires for demonstrating that they have completed this work-based learning experience. And then reporting that completion to the PIMS coordinator, as I mentioned, at the completion of the program. Students, I won't belabor the point, but complete your paperwork, show up, ready to engage, be at all the sessions, and then really do that reflection on what they've heard and learned and how it impacts their thinking. Sometimes they learn things like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this, or maybe I want to do an adjacent thing, or I didn't realize that I needed to work on my social skills because I need to be able to talk to people. I can't just send them a two-word text to get what I need done at work. Employers who are engaged, identify and prepare the professionals who are involved, make sure that they know what they're expected to share and have a strategy for engaging students so that it doesn't turn into an hour-long presentation each week because relationships aren't built on presentations, they're built on conversations and engagement. So the employers also coordinate who will be at each session and ideally make sure that one or more people attend multiple sessions. And again, that comes back to you want to have a relationship, and having more than one point of contact really helps facilitate that. I have greater social capital now. I have someone I can go to with questions after this is over. I feel less nervous about approaching them if I have a question about this career path moving forward. In the intermediary role, like the consortium can play, we have helped support the recruitment of the employer partners and the educators, so which districts can be at the table. We've helped facilitate sessions to make sure both before the program starts, and in between to make sure that PDE requirements are being met, that the appropriate content is planned, that there's feedback like, that was great. Also remember, don't use jargon. Remember to talk about, what do those words mean and why is that particular thing important? Because students usually don't have a lot of context unless their parents do a similar job. Again, we attended all of the sessions for the programs that we help facilitate. We also provided a description of the program that the educator liaisons could use to recruit students, and we'll provide that to you after this session. We also helped troubleshoot any challenges, and we sent regular reminders about the sessions. Now, if you're not working with an intermediary and you're not required to do so to implement the model with fidelity, you do want to make sure that someone is tending to these details, and usually someone at the one of the educators or the schools will need to do it because they will have most of the access that they need to make sure these things are happening. Inevitably, there are some logistical arbitrary paperwork that has to be completed. So make sure there's a registration form, that any media release forms are tended to, and someone needs to identify the platform, set it up, and make sure that the login information is distributed to everyone. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the protocols for these things based on living in a virtual environment for so long, but just to point out that some businesses do choose to use their platform for security purposes. Particularly financial institutions will choose WebEx because of security issues. They are very hesitant to use Google or Zoom because of that. You just need to make sure that you're working with, the business is working with the school or schools and intermediary to make sure that everyone has what they need, that students have whatever platform installed on their device, that there aren't blocks on the access from the school side. So as usual, all those IT details, ideally have your IT person on board for the ride to make sure things go as smoothly as possible. Oh, yes, Gina.
I was just going to say, with the forms, if you are setting this up with the industry professionals, check with them to make sure they may have a media release that they also need signed, but they may not be thinking about it right away. So if you ask them, you don't want that to pop up last minute where their legal department says, oh, wait a minute, did all of these students have their parents sign a photo release for us specifically? And a lot of times the person you're working with might not be thinking about that. So check with them if there's any kind of releases, even though it's virtual, that the students would have to sign, so you can make one packet to go with maybe anything that you're having them fill out for their school. So just check with them, because it's not always at the top of their head.
Excellent point, Gina, thanks. So because this webinar is primarily focused for educators, we talked about our tips and tricks for folks. So really, if you can, the best that you can, ensure that students can commit to the time required to get the most out of the program. If you're only scheduled for 6 one-hour sessions with a business and a student misses that, often you can't get a recording. And even if you do have a recording, that's not the ideal version of the program, right? Because you don't have a chance to build a relationship if you're watching a recording. So there are ways to work around it, but if from the outset a student can't commit to the time frame, then it's probably not the right time for them to engage in this program. Make sure your students understand that it's a small group program, that it's not that they'll have an hour every week to just chat about whatever they'd like with the professionals, because there's often not enough time for one-on-one mentoring, though there is always time for some questions to be asked during that time. And often the professionals will provide contact information for follow-ups. And that's a great way for students to continue to engage after the program is over. It is a good idea, we've heard it recommended, to meet with the students in advance of the program to prepare them and help answer any questions they may have. You're not expecting your students to show up in suits and ties every week, but perhaps clean clothes that aren't torn or ripped might be a recommendation that you have for them. As I mentioned earlier, having your IT professional on board and with you on day one, if possible, is a great idea. And consider either embedding the program within a course or having at least one teacher on board who teaches a related course, who can recommend students to the program or promote the program in their courses. That really helps with the recruitment and also helps students connect it back to what they're learning in the classroom, that it's not just a one-off thing that they're doing. So the first time that we piloted this program was with BNY Mellon, based in downtown Pittsburgh. We had 3 school districts involved: Woodland Hills, Keystone Oaks, and Greensburg-Salem. And so we had John Manley from Greensburg-Salem share with us his testimonial when we first did this webinar, and he has graciously allowed us to share that recording with you. So I'm going to let you hear directly from John.
Good afternoon, everyone. Like Debbie had shared, my name is John Manley. I'm one of the high school counselors at Greensburg-Salem High School. We were fortunate enough to participate in the pilot program with the consortium and with BNY Mellon this year. We recruited, I went off of some teacher recommendations for some students that were interested kind of in the business pathway, not necessarily one way or the other, but just in a general scope. And the teachers shared some recommendations with me, and then I reached out to them about this opportunity for them. I think with any type of career mentoring, I was looking forward just to see how the students would react and, the questions that they would come up with walking into a situation that maybe, was uncomfortable and kind of unfamiliar for them. Meeting a professional for the first time, what questions do I ask them? And then also hearing from the students, and saying to the students, they don't know what they don't know yet, and just allowing that opportunity for growth and listening to all of the speakers from BNY Mellon share their different experiences and possibly open some doors for the students to whether they want to continue on that career pathway, or whether they decide like, nah, this is maybe an avenue that I'm not necessarily interested in. I think the feedback from all of the students was positive. They, one, I think they would have much rather preferred probably going and seeing face-to-face and having a discussion face-to-face and being on site. But, that wasn't an opportunity that we could take advantage of at this point in time. So, we really tried to make the best of, sharing with the students that, okay, this could very well be what you're faced with in the future, showing up on time for a meeting, whether that's in person or over a computer, having your computer, your camera on, kind of what Debbie alluded to, appropriate dress and, not sitting in front of the camera with your hat backwards and maybe sipping a Coke, while you're, listening to and engaging with the speaker. So all of those things, I try to do a little prep work with the students prior to the sessions, and I have to say they did a great job with it. And overall, I think it was a great experience for the kids just to get that exposure and gain that exposure to, to the work-based industry, and for them to get those experiences.
Education, I'm a program director. I'm here with, so that's John. He's great. I'm sure he would be happy to talk with any educators who are on the call. But with that, I know we really aim to get you out. We said this was a half-an-hour webinar. We will keep it to half an hour, but we do have 4 minutes left. So if anyone has questions they want to add to the chat, we would be happy to address them at this point. And Gina, if you can tell me what the questions are, that would be super.
Yeah, I was going to say, Mr. Kleckner, I believe principal at Freeport, correct me if I'm wrong, wants to know if we help districts with a list of contacts of employers that are willing to mentor. Sure.
So we have some businesses who have participated in an an employer-focused training similar to this one, that we are able to share those contacts with you. We do also have some businesses who have expressed an interest in doing some this winter, so I will make sure that those folks are on that list if they are not. And you'll get a whole folders worth of materials for implementing this program in your district with or without other folks. In the next few days, it will include the description for recruiting students, a template that we used for with the BNY Mellon pieces, the original proposal to PDE, so you can see exactly what is required for the model to run smoothly, and a couple other things, including a list of tips and tricks that we think you'll find useful. So be sure to watch out for that.
Lori from Steel Center, I think that probably answered your question as well. And as Debbie said, we are working with a few organizations right now who are interested in actually running this spring. So you may get some invitations from us, or at least some information about that in the coming weeks. I did want to mention too, if you are setting these up with a business, make sure that you're asking them to have a nice wide range of employees, talking about all the different types of careers within that umbrella industry. I remember last school year, an aha moment kind of for kids, and I think for all of us, was when one of the employees at a bank talked about how they really felt like they were making a huge difference in their community because they were someone that was able to approve loans for people to open businesses down the street from them, and to maybe realize their dreams of starting something. So whether it was a mortgage and buying their home in that community, or it was starting their own business and being an entrepreneur, it was something that I think most people don't think of as a banker in that industry. And it's not always rosy. There's times that they do have to say no to people, but they did talk about that they did say yes a lot more times than people may think, and that was something that really gave them a great feeling every day when they went home. So I don't think that's something that we always think of in banking, but if you have students that have interests like that, that may be something. So just ask them to really talk about all the different things in that industry. Beth Patello, we have, which grade level of students do you find this most useful for? 11th and 12th. Kind of answered your question there.
Yeah, I would say for sure high school. I believe most, usually we try and have it before 12th grade. So often 10th and 11th graders, but sometimes some freshmen as well. Once you get into middle school, kids are not usually quite ready for this kind of focused discussion. But definitely once they're in high school, they're more likely to find something interesting. And as Gina was saying, most of the businesses we've coached, we try and have them, with BNY Mellon, it was finance or business generally, or IT is such a big part of finance. So just having a few different industry clusters that they're representing with their employees at the table. So it's not just one type of job. Anything else, Gina? Should we let them go?
Right on target there, Beth. So we're happy that you're all here. I don't see any other questions. We're 1 minute over if everyone's okay. I don't think we lost anyone, Debbie. That was fantastic.
It's always great when we don't lose folks. So if you have any questions after the fact, you can contact Gina or myself. And again, you'll get this slide deck in a few days. If you don't already have our contact information, it is on the consortium's website, which is tcfpe.org. And do follow us on social media if you can. We are often promoting things like this webinar on social media, as well as on our newsletter list. So if you're not already signed up, please consider doing that. And with that, I will thank you all so much for your time, and hope to hear from you all soon.